But I think if we really break it down and provide clarity, I think clarity is a big aspect. When you budget and say like, okay, I'm going to allocate some money for rent, some money for food, some money for light bills, all this stuff, and then I'm going to allocate some money for leisure and buying things that I like and clothing and extra stuff. So if one's able to find a lifestyle that meets all of those needs, I think that's really where one can find like a good like segue, good middle ground. Welcome back to Out of the Box podcast, where Steele and I, your host, get to talk about out of the box ideas. Today, we are going to be talking about how to balance your work life and your creative life, how you can start planning for future endeavors, especially when one is young, when one is in their mid 20s, trying to figure out life, especially when one wants to form a family in the future, when maybe one wants to have kids, just all those responsibilities that come along with it. But before we get started, I actually want to invite you guys to subscribe to our channel, because our commitment to continue providing amazing content will continue. So I would like to invite you to subscribe to our channel and get to see all the amazing out of the box ideas that we talk about weekly. So without further ado, Steele, I know we were just talking about this before we got started. So if you want to just kind of recap a little bit of what's going on, in your life, and maybe whatever you feel comfortable sharing, and also what things you feel kind of stuck in, because it feels almost as if we have several pathways that we could take in life, but then we just have to choose one, right? And so whenever we are provided with so many opportunities, how is it that we're able to choose one? And I think that's what we'll kind of break down through the podcast. So still, if you want to give us a recap.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just give a brief kind of overview of it. So basically, I've been talking about how in my life right now, at least, I mean, we talked about this in the Polymath podcast, so feel free to check that out to get more details. But basically, like trying to figure out, you're at this point in your life where you have to figure out what you want to do when you want to do so many things at once. And what do I mean by that? So from my life, at least, I mean that, I want to be creative, and that's in various domains, not just painting, but filmmaking, making short films, continue to write scripts, spec scripts, and scripts I want to film, that sort of thing. And, music, of course, but I haven't had time for music in a year, so that's been kind of put off to the side, but I've been wanting to get back into it. So there's the creative aspect, right, in my life that I do in my free time. And not only just in my free time, but when I have energy, which is another challenge of it all. The second thing is my job, and I have two jobs right now. So I have a writing job, and then I have my licensed professional counselor associate job, both of which I'm very thankful for. I mean, they're really great jobs, like in other words, I consider myself lucky to have those jobs, because a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do it, or you have to work really hard to kind of get to it, or so many years of college and that sort of thing. So not everyone gets to have that kind of job. So those are pretty cool to have for sure. And then the other thing is just the third thing is research. And I've progressed on research in the past 2 years working with you know a professor on that, and it's gone really well. It's gotten me some really good opportunities. Really, it's starting to pay off. And research, it takes a long time, and it takes a lot of dedication. It takes hours, sometimes, and then sometimes it only takes an hour. Depends. But this research has gotten me far in terms of publishing a manuscript, which is under review right now by a scientific journal. So that hopefully will go through. We'll find out. And then also a conference, a poster convention conference thing coming up in March that I'm going to have the opportunity to present the same research that's being under review right now for the journal. So that's really awesome. Like it's an amazing opportunity that not everyone gets to have. And so it's cool that it's paying off and it's wrapping up at a good time because at this point in my life, as me and you as they were talking about, I just graduated, a few months ago from UHV. So finally, all the studying, all the schooling, all the stuff, the training, everything takes up all your time. Like when you're in grad school, most people know you don't have a life. Like you just have time for nothing else. And so finally, I've gotten to a point where I do have some free time. But as this research is wrapping up, in particularly, but if I get back into research, my fear is that's going to go back to the way it was in grad school, where I don't have any free time, or at the very least, I don't have the energy to even be creative or do anything else, but just, watch movies and go to work, which is not really what I want for myself. And we broke it down like this just really quickly. I do blogs on the weekends, usually from Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday in the mornings, and then like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And then by that, I'm so burned out. I have to take a break for a while. And then in the late afternoon, I get to be creative because I have a little bit of free time. It seems like it goes by faster. So basically, like Saturday through Tuesday, I'm doing blogs. Tuesday through Thursday, I'm doing my work as a, licensed professional counselor associate. Um, and then Fridays, usually a bit more free time. Maybe that's the kind of day I have off, usually more or less. But then sometimes there's a meeting or something like that. So so my concern is if I'm already doing blogs on the weekends, right, and low energy because of all the work from that, and then also from working during the week, and if I add research on top of that, and if my work increases to 30 to 40 hours a week, and I add research on top of that, then that means my afternoons where I would normally have free time and even have low energy would be filled in with research because research does take a lot of time and it can be very tedious work depending on what phase you are. So just based on my own experiences, my fear is that if I, keep going down, it's frustrating because research could take me far and I know I can maybe contribute, you know, in that field. So part of me feels like if I don't, am I taking away from my abilities of being able to give to the world? But if I do that, then I won't have any free time. At the very least, won't have any energy to be creative anymore. And for me, when I'm not creative, it can lead to depression. Like honestly, it just makes me feel like I don't know what the point is of life anymore when I don't get to do anything creative. It just kind of sucks. So
Yeah. Yeah. And, I've been in that position too, where, you know, I didn't go to grad school after graduation. So for me, I got to experience the work life, um, I would say, sooner in a way. And so when I was working, I was just kind of happy that I didn't have to like take tests anymore and that sort of thing. But then I started realizing that as I worked more, it consumed the time that I used to allocate for writing songs, for creating new balloon figures or just different stuff like that. So I felt almost creatively stuck in a rut. And for a creative person, and I know we've heard talks about this, specifically the one that mentioned it was Jordan Peterson, that he said when a creative person is not creating, they just might as well like die because it's just like rotting away their creative juices. And not everyone's creative from what we've seen, but for those who are, they need to allocate that time. And so I guess like to make it more digestible and more applicable for all types of people, it's really finding those things that make you feel energized. Because for example, we could be, making more money, let's say $20,000 more with like a research job. You're doing research, but it's consuming more of your time. You're making $20,000 more, but every day you get back home and you just don't have energy to do anything, basically. And you are a creative person, let's say in this example, then it's just it just won't work. It will eat you alive almost. Well, let's say you decide to take $20,000 less, but you're still able to make meet. You're still able to take a vacation. You're still able to do buy little um like collectibles, or do go to the movies, whatever leisure one likes. Then it might not be like filled with leisure activities, but at least you have the essential, which is you know creating and feeling energized. And I think that's something that we sometimes don't take we take for granted. We just think like, oh, like, yeah, like I'll have energy to do everything in my week. But we realize like, shoot, like we do get sick, we do get tired, we do have those moments. And so I have to find those things that energize me, right? Whether that be working out, whether that be like church activities, whether that be meditating, or whether that be just, you know, um, watching TV, whatever energizes you, really like just try to incorporate that into your daily activities. Just because if that's something that pushes you forward, cutting it out will not do any of the opposite. Like you won't still continue getting energy. Um, let's say you cut out working out and that gives you a lot of energy, then cutting it out and adding another job during that time, or working for something, money wise during that time, won't add to your life, because there's always like a balance, right? There needs to be a balance. Yes, we do need to make means end, or meet the needs of our lifestyle. And sometimes I mentioned lifestyle, which made me think of another thing, but we need to make means and or meet our needs, and we also need to have some leisure time and activities that like push us forward. And so, in terms of lifestyle, it made me think right now that I mentioned it. Sometimes we just have to really look at ourselves in the mirror and say, like, what kind of lifestyle do I need? Do I need a fancy car? Do I need um, the best type of camera or computer, or the best internet, the best, you know, shoes, the best clothing? Like we once we really break it down and say like, who are we trying to impress? Like, are we trying to show our parents that we're like making it big? Are we trying to show, our friends that we are really cool because we have more money, or because we actually were able to buy this house in this location? Like, what is that? What does life really mean? Because a lot of people tell me like, hey, you're doing this artistic endeavor, and a lot of people kind of judge me a little bit of like doing balloon art full time and music. But it really meets the needs that I have, right? It does not surpass them, right? Because I really don't need much. And so for somebody else, maybe they do need more, and that might be something to take into consideration. But since I don't need much, like I can live with that lifestyle, right? It's good for me. Plus, I'm doing something artistic, which is a plus that makes me feel alive and makes me feel like I'm doing something worth it in people's lives through what I create. And
Yeah,
so I think that's honestly like looking at oneself in the mirror and saying like, hey, like what are truly the things that I need to do to make uh, my lifestyle meet what I'm capable of achieving monetarily.
yeah,
That
uh,
makes sense.
exactly. Yeah, you don't feel the need to make a ton of money to be happy. You want to continue doing the things that make you happy. It doesn't mean like you're not looking for a career that makes you like the most money. You're looking for a career that makes you enough to be able to live, meet your basic needs.
Yeah,
But also
and of
fun.
course, if it does come along, like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna deny it,
Let's say,
but it's really looking down and saying like, well, what are my actual standards of life that I need to live, right? Do I really need a $4 coffee? Can I just make coffee at home,
Yeah, I think that way a lot.
right? Do I really need to go eat out with friends? Maybe I can just meet them afterwards at the park where we were gonna meet.
Yeah.
Like knowing, because that's one of the things that I sometimes allocate money for, like just fun stuff, like a little bit of eating out. And so it really comes down to budgeting, right? Because I think sometimes we get scared of making decisions because we're like, oh well, what if I'm not able to make ends meet? But I think if we really break it down and provide clarity, I think clarity is a big aspect. When you budget and say like, okay, I'm going to allocate some money for rent, some money for food, some money for light bills, all this stuff, and then I'm going to allocate some money for leisure and buying things that I like and clothing and extra stuff. So if one's able to find a lifestyle that meets all of those needs, I think that's really where one can find like a good like segue, good middle ground. And like even if it's not the best area where one's living, but it's really like I think it really comes down to the person to really say like, hey, I understand that right now I'm not making that much. I want to live. Uh, it takes humility in oneself to say like, hey, I'm gonna be living here. Maybe this might be my life forever, but maybe it won't. But I know that I'm doing something that I really enjoy and that it's bringing joy to others, and it's making me feel alive. And I think that's really what I've been following in my life. A lot of people say like, well, you have a college degree, you have experience. Why don't you just use that to get like a really good job in a really good company? And I think that is a fair logic or way of thinking of life. But sometimes one needs to take risk, right? Like when one's young, I think that's the best time to take risks because I don't want to get to my 60s, 70s, or 80s. I don't know how long I'll live and look back to my life and say, like, oh man, I should have started that business, or I should have, gone and done this by myself, or started a podcast with friends, just different stuff like that. That I tell myself, like, I don't want to regret not having done something that I truly felt was a calling. And
Yeah,
so
it's true. That's how I
that's something I think about, the regret aspect.
that's how I felt my whole life. I don't know if it's my life circumstances that made me feel that way. Just I just don't take things for granted. I don't know. It's just that's how I've always seen things, and to me, passing up an opportunity or just like I hear people say things like, I want to do this. I want to start painting. I want to start a band, or I want to start a podcast, or I wish I could make movies like that, or I wish I could, write or anything. They don't do it, and I don't understand why. And maybe it's a lack of self confidence. And this would be a good topic for another podcast, actually. Why people don't, I don't know, maybe they don't believe in themselves. Maybe it's a lack of confidence. Maybe it's they don't have time. There's too many other important things in life going on, like what we
Yeah.
talked about. I just don't, for me, it's like that doesn't cut it. Like, I don't care if I don't have the skills, if I don't think I have the skills to paint, or if I don't think I have the skills to make a movie. I mean, if I actually believe that, I wouldn't have done any of those
Mm,
things. Seriously.
yeah.
I mean,
Because it's interesting what you mentioned, like belief is the start to a lot of things. It's the start to believing that you can live a certain lifestyle, believing that you can actually live off of, you know certain things. And sometimes, belief can start the process of making things possible, right? Let's say like one wants to live off of, like how I'm doing it, live off of balloon art, you know? And one thinks about it, it's like, well, I know it's possible. I'll find a way to make it possible. And so first it starts with believing in oneself, and then you start looking at it and clarifying how that path is going to look like.
Yeah.
Right. But it starts with belief. I think that's a good aspect. Like, I know we're talking about the struggles of like finding a path of where to go, but if you don't have belief in yourself in the first place, taking either path is just gonna it's not gonna go anywhere. It's just gonna be walking, uh uh sleepwalking to through the path almost.
And taking action. I mean, seriously, like if I hadn't talked to my parents and explained to them how passionate I was about filmmaking, they wouldn't have bought me that MacBook in fifth grade. They wouldn't have bought me the camera either, and I wouldn't have continued making movies. I would have left Dudley Elementary School. I wouldn't have made any more movies, and I would have made it to the film festival. I wouldn't have had my film screen. I wouldn't be making movies right now. I mean, my
Yeah.
parents, I convinced them to buy me a camera and a computer to edit, and I continued that on my own. I didn't just, and I hear so many people tell me like, "Oh, I wish, I had a camera or something, or like this, or like you, or so I could do this too." And I'm like, "You can though." Like, I saved my money up. I saved all my graduation money up, and I bought myself a $950 camera to film HD footage, and then I used that camera. I saved my money up, and I bought a new Mac computer, and then I bought the editing software. I saved my money that I earned. And I'm like, certain people like they have the means to do it either through parents or, and maybe not in every case. Some parents are more strict and some parents won't listen to that, which, kind of sucks to be
Yeah.
transparent. But I was lucky in that at least because I know, different people have different situations too. So I'm not going to hold that against anyone. But like if you have a job and you can save up money to achieve the things you want to do and you're choosing not to spend the money on that, then I mean it kind of falls on you like in
Yeah.
some way if you have the means to do it and you're choosing not to do it. You're
Yeah.
making excuses or anything. Like if you want to paint, go to the store and buy oil paint, buy a canvas, go to garage sale, look for something that's more affordable, do anything.
Yeah. Start with the
Save
minimum.
up for a camera, buy a camera, do it. And I'm not gonna go on, but that's the whole gist of what I'm trying to say is like I worked hard, man. I wasn't just given these things. Like I actively worked hard my whole
Mhm.
life making movies and doing all painting and being creative and doing these projects. I wasn't just handed it. It didn't just get handed to me. And that's the point I'm trying to make is like so many people, man, they have the potential and they say they want to do it, but they don't follow through or they just give it up after a day or it's all talk and I just don't understand that. My mind can't understand it, I guess. And I
Yeah.
think I'm just wired differently. I don't know what it is.
And sometimes it could be also like, if I were to put myself in some shoes, like sometimes it's like the imposter syndrome. Like, not only do they have family that maybe don't support them, which can be, and sometimes it's unfortunate because, maybe they just have really good artistic skills, but they want them to do sports or, just different stuff like that, you know, I think about those things. Like, we could have had an amazing Picasso in our modern era, but right now he's a lawyer, you know? And so, you know, I think we sometimes sidetrack kids like skills, to try to push them to do something that's like modern day acceptable and worthy of pursuing. And so sometimes other areas of work get looked down upon because it seems like, oh, they just are not worth going into. And I think that's something that's a conversation maybe for another podcast.
Yeah.
But as far as like doing, like what you were saying, like being motivated and starting with the least possible, I think that takes humility, right? Like saying like, hey, I want to start painting. Should I invest in some classes? Well, I don't have money to invest in classes. Well, maybe I can save up for some classes. Or maybe, you know what, I saw that my mom had some old paints, like you said, and I'll just start messing around with it and see what I can create. And I think, resources are not always the problem. Like not having resources, I think not believing in oneself and not taking action, that's where the problem
Those are
is.
the two key things. And I also think, unless you've exhausted every resource you have available, every option, then I feel like there's no excuse except for your own choice that you make.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's an extreme thing to say, but it seems like it's the only logical thing that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you think about it, like, you know, well, I want to be an artist. Well, where can I start? Well, I have a bunch of water bottles that get used up all the time. People in other countries, they find so many interesting ways to use water bottles, which I've seen.
That's
People have built houses, people have built so many things. Like, well, just try to figure out what resources do I have available in my surrounding, like what do I have now,
yeah,
not like
all the time.
not coming from a state of lack and saying like, oh, I can't because I don't have,
Yeah,
saying, well, I will because I have. Right, I think it's changing the conversation, what comes out of one's mouth and what comes out of one's head. And so when one changes the conversation of like, not I don't have, but this is what I have, I think that kind of like starts the mentality of like finding solutions for things, right? Because in one conversation, one's like, well, I just don't have this yet, or I don't have that yet. What's gonna happen when you do, right? Are you gonna still do it? And I think that's what happens sometimes. People like get it and they're like, well, what now? Well, now I need to get a better lighting because that's because the the footage is good, but the lighting is not good. So I need to get some lights, and that will make it better. And so we focus on making things so much better that we forget on the talent, on the actual rawness of doing something, right? Let's say for like YouTubers, some of them start with super bad footage. They start with like bad microphones and just, the least possible. But when somebody has like a good talent of talking, of speaking, of motivating, of whatever they're trying to do in their life, whatever message they want to give out to the world, then I think that's what people listen to. That's what people get attached to. Not really like the fact that there was a refrigerator in the back of one's
yeah,
one's
exactly. Yeah.
screen, or the fact that I don't know, so many things could go wrong. But I think it's taking the action and saying, I'm gonna start this. I don't know where it's gonna go, but I'm following this bliss of doing it, and I'm gonna start with whatever I have because I don't know what tomorrow will bring. So might
Yeah,
as well do it.
exactly. I believe that for sure. You never know. And life is short. That's, yeah. There's one other thing I wanted to add as we're wrapping up is about the concern about family that I brought up, because of course, I want to get married and have kids. And, so basically I want to start a family someday. And so my other concern with this time thing is, with grad school, for example, even sometimes during my undergrad years, my last 2 years were extremely busy. Maybe like not the last semester, but like junior year was so busy, and then grad school was so busy that I had no time for a life, like hardly ever. So maybe like I'm not saying never had time, but for the most part, for the majority of the time, I did not have time for anything else except for school and work and studying. And now that I finally graduated, I'm like, okay, maybe that time will open up, and it has a little bit. But like we were talking about earlier, if I get back into research hardcore, you know, it could be beneficial for my future. It could be beneficial to the world potentially if I'm able to contribute to the world with the research. And I don't want to throw that gift away. So if I could make it work, I would find every way I could make it work before abandoning it completely. Or at the very least, I could go back to it and just go back and forth. So there's options. But my concern is like getting to another point in my life right now where I don't have time to, I guess, have a social life, or have time to get to a point in my life where I start getting closer to finding like a wife, to finding a wife, to starting a family. Because I mean, all the time before I didn't have time for that. And now I want to finally have time for it. But like I said, if I'm doing blogs, if I'm doing this job full time, up to 40 hours, and research, then I don't have time for anything else. So how am I supposed to try to find a family? And I wonder how many other people have concerns like that. Let us know in the comments below for sure. Because I've read a little bit here and there that college students, marriage is getting delayed. Well, not only because marriage is not as popular as it used to be, but then in some cases too, marriage is getting delayed because of college and also because of college debt. Because people are now getting married. Because back then, just real briefly, back then people would get married like when they're 18 or in their early 20s, right? Because they graduate from high school, or maybe college didn't take as long. That was like the norm. But now it's changed. Now more and more people are going to college for like 4 more years and graduating and finally getting into their main career at the age of like 21 or 25. So they're not really starting their career and their main income until they're 25, and then they have college debt. So raising a family when you have college debt, and I'm not saying it's impossible because I've seen some people really pull it off, but I think marriage is getting delayed maybe because of people being busy or in college. Not everyone, but it seems like for some people that's the case. And so I just think it's interesting, and my concern is, I don't know if you ever felt this way, but like it seems like the years keep going by. I'm 25, and before I know it, I'll be 30 years old. As time goes by faster, as you get older. And then before you know it, I'll be like 35. I'm like, if I keep pushing this thing to where I have no time for building a family or anything, I'm not gonna have a family until I'm like in my late 30s or 40s, which again, it's not impossible. People can make it work. I guess maybe that ties back to expectations of how you think life is gonna go. Like I imagine myself getting married in my early 20s, but now I'm going and pushing into my 30s and I'm still not even close, I feel like. And I have not much experience really. So I don't even know if I don't know. Like, yeah, I mean, that's the gist of it, dude. Just like the concern of like, I feel like I keep pushing family off and I'm going to be too old by the time I even have time for it.
Yeah. And I think those are valid like thoughts of to have that one certainly needs to put time to things so that they may blossom, right? And so if family life is something that one aspires to, one of course needs to put in time to do so, right? It's going out, meeting people, maybe going to groups, events, something that one likes, and meeting people and maybe seeing like if they can be friends first of all, and then afterwards, um, you know, finding the opportunity to blossom relationships. And maybe this could be also another topic for another podcast, like how to go about finding, you know, dates or setting up dates, and for potentially meeting with um future spouse, right? And so I think that's something that certainly needs time, and that's something I've been thinking about too as I'm creating, as I am doing my daily routines and stuff like that. What is my life going to look like in the future, right?
Scary thing.
And I think it's hard to not think about that because we're moving so fast that it's just like we have to plan for the future. We're always planning, scheduling activities for next year and that sort of thing. And so that's why I think about that and I'm like, yeah, like potentially, marriage could come, within 2, 3 years, 4 years from now, like maybe like late 20s, early 30s. And so that's something that's, I think about those things. And also like you were saying, the experience part, like of dating, that one sometimes feels like, well, I haven't really dated much, because I focused so much on my studies, I focused so much on my work, and I haven't had the time to really get to meet people, especially when one has like an introverted heart
Yeah.
or being. We can really like I would say I'm a little bit extroverted, but I do have my introverted side that's pretty strong. And so sometimes I can deal without people for quite some time. and then I might just like call someone or do something. But I can deal with like not having people around me for a long time. And so with that, being said, I think sometimes it goes to the problem of like, well, why should we just push ourselves to find people and meet people and that sort of thing. uh and so I think those are like questions and ideas that we could lead to another podcast about dating and finding potential dates and how to organize that and stuff in one's life. But yeah, I think we can. Do you have any final thoughts still of like what would be important, clarity in life and other aspects?
Um, yeah, that's about all I can really think of. I mean, and maybe if anyone can relate, feel free to let us know in the comments. I just feel like, and maybe because I've read online and stuff like that, and seen different things and heard different things, and it seems like people worry about that goal, the certain life goals they have, whether it be starting a family and feeling like it keeps getting pushed off, or wanting to aspire to their dreams, but feeling that they're kind of drifting away as they grow into the, I guess, main career is one way to put it. So I think that's what kind of the two things we kind of touched on today. It's just, like, I guess, just for example, like I want to be more creative, conflict there. I want to start a family, conflict there. And the conflict stem from time. So, I mean, that's just
Yeah,
the basis of what we've been discussing.
yeah. How to organize one's time
Yeah.
and where to allocate time, because we do have time.
Yes. But
So
we,
it's one of our most precious resources.
the conflict is choosing where to put that time. That's
Yeah.
been broken.
And also when to have like the timing of when to have a family, the timing when to like
Yes.
sacrifice
And
like certain things
like,
for a family.
there's not really a time you have to, but it's,
Like everybody, I guess it's this is something like that could sound very subjective, which is true, right? Everybody has their own time, and everyone's partner will come at the right time. But at the same time, one has to be open with the schedule to allow them to come into your life.
yeah,
Because if one's like super busy, well, then it's gonna be hard to welcome them into your life.
exactly. Very true.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thank you guys for staying towards the end. Like Steele said, if you have any things that you really related to that you think yourself are going through, please let us know down below in the comments. We would love to interact and engage with you down below. And also subscribe to our channel, because we are, like we said at the beginning, going to continue providing amazing content, out of the box ideas. So we look forward to what's coming next for this upcoming year. And we wish you the best for 2022. Take care.